Can you hear me now?
Yes, Swami.
Okay,
Yes, Swami.
okay, fine. So some of them message that they are not able to hear. Anyway, so we were talking about the seventh step of yoga, that is known as dhyana. And as I told you, it takes a lot of time to reach a stage where we can really meditate. Meditation is a word which we use so commonly, but when we really sit for meditation, we find that we are awfully deficient because we have not practiced all the previous disciplines which are needed to practice the seventh step of yoga. The first six steps leading to dharana, which we discussed last time, the first six steps are so important that a deficiency in any one of those steps. For example, you take for example the yama and niyama, of course, requires a person to practice all the disciplines which are needed for even practicing pranayama and asanas. So before that, we have a range of disciplines which we tend to neglect, and we think that we can just do away with that and start directly the process of meditation. Though some people succeed, but really they don't get the full benefit of meditation, and they find the struggle an uphill task to meditate when you have not practiced the basic disciplines. For example, you know what yama and niyama I'm talking about. There are so many, some kind of basic purity, some kind of basic unworldliness, some kind of titiksha, some kind of patience. So all these things are not just qualities or which are to be acquired so that people can call you a good person. That's not the purpose. It is for our own, in our own interest, that these yama and niyama are given, which makes a person or a yogi who is trying to practice yoga follow the later steps. Even a person, an unsteady person who is full of desires, cannot even practice asanas. He may practice forcibly, but the asanas do not give him the steadiness he wants. Sthiram Sukham Asanam. Asana has been simply defined as Sthiram Sukham Asanam. What makes you steady, what makes you peaceful, what makes you sit quietly is asana. Now, if a person who is full of desires, running around all the time, busy with so many worldly things, gross things, even if he wants to, he cannot practice asana. Though he may practice a few yogasanas under a tutor, but none of these asanas serve the purpose for which asanas are to be practiced. Every asana, physical asana, I'm talking of physical asanas, which is the second step. Even every asana is supposed to give you some kind of steadiness. If it doesn't do, then the very purpose of asana is not served. So also with pranayama. Why do we do pranayama? It's not just a breathing exercise so that our body becomes healthy. That is a byproduct, but the purpose is it prepares you for the higher practice of yoga. That is pratyahara. As I told you, we come to so many things. Pranayama, then we have this pratyahara, then we have dharana, which we explained in great detail what this idea of dharana is. Now, without dharana also, I mean, after having practiced all the preliminary disciplines, yama, niyama, and then practiced asana, pranayama to the extent we can, and finally coming to dharana, we become ready for dhyana. So now Swamiji gives an example which he is repeating. He has spoken about that in dharana also, but he is again trying to give an example how perception takes place, because you see, people have a tendency to forget what was discussed when he first spoke of pratyahara. He spoke of the control of the nerves, control of the sense organs, and he mentioned also, Swamiji mentioned that many children are told you should control, you should not tell lies, you should not do this, you should not do that, and many of us are told to do certain things, and then we still do it. and we still go after the gross. Why does it happen? Because parents have told us not to do it, our teachers have told us not to do it, but how not to do it, Swamiji says, is not part of our education. You just tell a child, don't lie, don't take things which do not belong to you. But if he finds that it is easier to get things without uh, putting in the required effort, so what is the wrong in if I just grab certain things? It is a much easier way. That is how people become thieves. Children who are not taught that. So Yama and Niyama have to be taught and not only told that these are the Yama and Niyama, you have to follow these rules like commandments. You have this Bible says you should do that. The Jewish scripture says you should do that. Gita says you should do that. But the child will ask, I agree with you, we should do all these things. We should exercise self-control. We should do all these things. But how to do it, that is not taught. So that is what Swamiji says. In Dhyana also, he repeats the same thing which he repeated when he was teaching us Pratyahara and other things. He says, he gives a very simple example. This is from our day-to-day example. No philosophy is involved here. Now everybody will attest to the fact that whatever Swamiji the example Swamiji gives is a matter of our day-to-day experience. Every minute, every moment we are experiencing this. And so he is giving a very, very rational way how to practice dhyana. He says we hear a sound. That is his first statement. First, there is external vibration. Now everybody knows, students of physics know, that when two objects strike each other, some vibrations are created. Those vibrations are known as sound vibrations. So depending on the two objects that are striking, if a bell strikes and if two wooden pieces strike, the sound is going to be different. Now, first there is external vibration. So you see, Shabda, Artha and Jnana. These three things I explained to you last time, but you have to remember these are so important that without this, Swamiji is repeating it again because he knows without this we cannot understand why we cannot meditate, why dhyana is not possible. First he says, there is this external vibration. So far so clear? Now second, the nerves carry it to the mind. I mean, it is assumed that when the sound vibrations are there, they will hit your ear, and provided you are not deaf, you hear that sound, whatever that sound may be. And the next process, biology will tell you, physiology will tell you, is taking those eardrum gets some vibrations, and those vibrations are conveyed to the brain center or the mind. So mind is actually a general thing, and Manomaya Kosha. And Swamiji does not use the word brain because a brain may be there, but if the mind is not there, then it will not react. So the mind and brain are different things in Indian philosophy. One has to remember. Brain may be a medium for the mind, but mind is not the brain. So sometimes you see when we are in a very bad mood, when you are in a very thinking something very deeply, you hear so many sounds, but you don't react to them because those sounds become useless for you. Your mind is so engaged, so deeply concerned with some problem that it does not even have time to spare. You may hear wonderful music. Normal times you would have danced listening to that song or music, but you don't do it now because your mind is somewhere else. So the brain may be there, the nerves may carry the feeling or sensation of that wonderful music, but you just shut this music, I'm not in a mood to listen. That you will hear very often, that people may be laughing all around you, but you will find one such person just keeping quiet. He is not able to enjoy as others because his mind is preoccupied. His mind is not there. So unless Swamiji uses the mind, because the nerves have to carry it through the brain to the mind. Now if the mind does not register it, then no sound will have any effect on it. So that's why you find some people, they hear so many bad things or some abuse or something, some anger around them, and they are wonderfully calm men, they don't react. What is the reason? Their brain has received the signal, they have heard the same thing which others have heard, all others have got angry and reacted. Some of them have reacted even before the sentence was completed. Some react slowly but surely, and some don't react at all, thinking that it is foolishness or some kind of uh, untrue statement which that person is making. So we don't have to take him seriously at all. So you see, the reactions are different depending on the different mind. Not only different minds, but different reactions. And these reactions are done by a part of the mind which is known as buddhi. So the difference between different minds are the difference in the buddhi. The mind is same. The nerve carries the same sound to all sitting in that room. But only some people react in a with the immediate effect. Some people take some time, some people don't react and just tolerate it or just listen to it. So the reaction depends on the quality of the mind or the quality of the buddhi. So that is Vijnanamaya Kosha. But most of the people, especially those who are still at the animal level, their mind are very rudimentary, just like a dog's mind or any animal's mind. It hears a sound, it immediately reacts. The deer hears the sound of a lion or a tiger and it starts running. It doesn't even think, it's instinctive. So Swamiji says, this carrying of the sound by the nerves to the mind is the second step. And then the third, that is known as Artha. Artha means, Shabda is the sound. Artha means the meaning of that sound, that it is a good sound or a bad sound, pleasurable sound or a dangerous sound, or some signal is there. So animals also react to this. There is no difference between man and animal. Animal also is very sensitive to sound. The moment the deer hears a slightest sound, its ears are so sharp that it reacts. But it reacts because of its instinct, not because it has acquired some kind of discrimination. Whereas human being has that higher capacity, has that Vijnanamaya Kosha highly developed, which makes it think, should I react? Why should I react? When should I react? And all those things. So he is supposed to have, if he is a yogi or if he is a decent human being, a well advanced human being, I mean a noble human being, then he has this time at his disposal to withhold the reaction, to not just react. Shabda and Artha has come, but Jnana has also come. That Jnana, third part, in yoga they are known as Shabda, Artha, and Shabda is the sound which you hear. This is just one example Swamiji is giving. Artha is the meaning of that sound, and Jnana is the understanding of the nature of that sound. You know it is a bell, and then you know the bell is in some monasteries, they ring the bell. Then you know if the bell rings at 12 o'clock or 12:30, you have to go for food. Nobody has to tell you. The Artha says that it is a bell. Jnana says that it is the bell for food. Now you are supposed to attend to that. Or if a doorbell rings, you know somebody is there outside. So that Jnana comes to you as a result of your thinking. In physics, they are nothing but vibrations, motions in the nerve and brain, emotions in the nerve and the brain, the second part, Artha, and the mental reaction is Jnana. Now, Swamiji says, what is so significant about these three processes? Why do we have to separate it? Does it not happen all of a sudden? Yes, in animals it happens all of a sudden. That's why they are known as instinctive animals. So if we are better than animals, if we are advanced or if we are more evolved than animals, then we have to separate these three. That is a challenge. That is what dhyana is all about. Dhyana, Swamiji says, in every perception they are distinct, but we should be able to perceive them and distinguish them. In meditation, we should now employ the strong and controlled mind which we have developed through yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara and dharana. So Swamiji says, when you have understood the 6 steps, then you come to the dhyana, that is in meditation. You have to employ this mind. So one has to assume that one's mind has become strong by the result of first yama, niyama. Yama is external behavior. Niyama is the behavior you set, the standard you set for yourself, patience, endurance, and all these things, these are internal qualities. Yama are external qualities, like not stealing. Okay, you don't steal, that is fine, that is a yama. But aparigraha, not taking others' things, not accepting gifts. So these are all yama, external behavior. Niyama, as you all know, is some internal self-control, that not getting angry. There are so many things which we discussed. So yama and niyama you understood. Uh, then we have asana, which makes a person steady. Now this is important because physical steadiness gives rise to mental steadiness most of the time. But it is not necessary. If the mind is disturbed, then even if you are physically steady, but at least the basic thing is to be physically steady. Then pranayama, that is regulating the breath, and through that regulating the nerve currents. So you see the nerve currents, how they are going and how you are getting angry and whether you should get angry or not. All these things are possible if the nerve currents are under your control. If they are not under your control, then there is no question of controlling. There is no question of dhyana at all. Because dhyana is possible only if the lower steps are first followed. Yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara. Then we learnt what pratyahara is. All of you know dharana is. Now, in meditation, begin with the gross objects. Now you see, every time you are told to meditate on your Ishta, you take him to be a physical reality, who lived as a human being, who played his Leela, who had so many qualities. We know when we read the biography of our Ishta, when we read Ramayana, we know who Rama was, what were his qualities. We meditate on his qualities, we meditate on his play. Same thing with Krishna. So all these incarnations, we first meditate on them as gross people, because they came to the gross world, because they know that human mind is not capable of catching Satchidananda. They are just empty words. What do you mean by Satchidananda? What do you mean by Divine Mother? What do you mean by Prakriti? Where is Prakriti? So Prakriti has to incarnate. That is the argument which Thakur gave and convinced Narendra. He said, you may not need an incarnation, but people like Girish need it. They need some concrete person who can tell them the way, show them the way. Only a very few like Naren could directly understand through his wonderful Vijnanamay Kosha intellect. But everybody doesn't have it. They begin with the gross, and there's nothing wrong in beginning with the gross. But Swamiji says, slowly rise to finer and finer until it becomes objectless. Now that is the goal of all meditation. Whether you start with an incarnation, whether you start with a stone, whether you start with some kind of deity whom you have not seen, you don't have to consider him as a human being. You take anything. You take a Shivalinga, for example. It's just an object. We represent Shiva with a Shivalinga. We don't worship Shiva. We don't know, or we may not even understand what the Purana say, Shiva Purana says about Shiva, about his qualities, whether he was white, whether he had matted hair, what type of person he was. We may or may not know, but if you worship the Shivalinga, the effect is the same. So you begin with the gross, then, but slowly you have to rise to finer and finer until it becomes objectless. Now what is the reason? Why should we become objectless? Because as long as the object is there, as long as we told this several times, Prakriti has two parts. One is Parama Prakriti and the other is the Prakriti that we see. Now we see, with in spite of all our efforts to manipulate and to do well in the gross, some part of the gross, 50% of it rather than, depends on the karma also, but 50% of it gives you joy, 50% of it gives you pain. So we are just hoping that the pain will be less. It's a vain hope, but we still hope that someday our pain will go in the gross. I'm not talking of the ultimate. From ultimate point of view, pain has to go one day. But from the gross point of view, everybody hopes. Every day gets up and hopes, oh, tomorrow the day will be good. Day after tomorrow the day will be good. Once I become rich, I will be good. But then he finds he becomes rich, he earns a lot of money, and then he finds he is not able to enjoy that money or enjoy that prosperity for which he has worked so hard. Or he thinks he will just hopes after hopes, hope that he'll get a lottery or some windfall, he'll inherit some money somehow, and he just doesn't have to do anything, he will get it. So there are vain hopes. Asha is something which uh, Swamiji said in his beautiful poem Amba Stotra. Amba is the stotra he wrote to the Divine Mother. He says, I don't understand. Why do you hang this rope of hope? Hope is a rope. He has compared hope to a long rope which people seem to catch, but it never comes under. He says, karma pasha. Karma pasha means karma is like a rope which is we don't even when we try to grip it, it simply seems to slip away from our hands. So that is the nature of the gross, and that is how mother plays with the gross. That's why Swamiji says the object of meditation is start with the gross, hold mother who is gross. You can't simply give away the gross. Take mother as a human being. That's why Sri Ramakrishna said Shakti alone can incarnate. Without Shakti, there cannot be no incarnation, because the Brahman himself is pure. He is fine. He is objectless. There is no object. But he has to come down at a Parama Prakriti, has to become Prakriti and then shows the gross form. So the gross is always tempting you to, you want to find peace in the gross, you want to find happiness in the gross. But Swamiji says if that were possible, then meditation would not be necessary. So meditation is begin with the gross, but don't end with the gross. There's no harm in beginning with the gross. Mind should first be used in perceiving external causes of sensations. Try to find out what is that I'm meditating upon. Who is Thakur? Why should I meditate on Sri Ramakrishna? What is so special about him? Read his biography. So these are all gross things we begin with. And there's nothing wrong in doing that. Then the internal motions. Now he is giving, mind should be first used in perceiving external causes of sensation, that is Shabda. Now for example, the Guru gives us the mantra. Now let us not go to an incarnation. Let us just take the sound symbol. The mantra is the sound symbol of the incarnation. Mother says Japat Siddhi, means you can get the same result as you get by meditation by repeating certain names. After all, they are sounds. Mantra is just a sound. How can a mantra give me the highest? Because it's a Shabda. It is just a Shabda. But Swamiji says, no, it is a Shabda, it has an Artha, and it has a Jnana. So he says, now all have been mixed up. So mother says, if you can't do anything, at least repeat. So as you go on repeating the Shabda, then you come to the Artha, and then by the grace of mother, you get the Jnana, and then you get full knowledge. Now, first Swamiji says, mind should be used in perceiving. First the mantra should be heard, either in the mind or from the mouth of the Guru, and once you hear from the mouth of the Guru loudly, you, if possible, hear it again and again, but if you can't hear, at least mentally repeat. Then the mind succeeds in, first there should be the external causes of sensation, the mantra which you hear, then the internal motions. Now that mantra becomes an undercurrent. Now if you continuously repeat the mantra, you will find that it does certain things which are apparently not perceivable by ordinary people. We have to have faith in the beginning. When mother says you do it, easiest and the best way to solve the problems of life is do the mantra. You may say, after all, it's a sound. Yes, if it is just Shabda, but then this Shabda is different from other Shabdas because it has a Bija. The Bija has the capacity, according to Tantras, to reveal the Artha and the Jnana. What we do in normal circumstances is we hear a bell, then decide what is this. Oh, it is a bell sound. Oh, this bell sound is for dinner because it is ringing at around 12 o'clock. So I should go. So that is the Jnana. But does mantra have a similar meaning? Yes. Definitely, if the Guru has explained to you properly what the mantra does, then you don't go after the sound. You repeat the mantra in the mind, but at the same time you have the artha of it automatically. It reveals. You don't have to worry that every time you repeat the mantra, you hear the shabda, the artha will become clear. It's not necessary. Faith can help you in revealing the artha at the appropriate time. So when the mind, then the internal motions, and then its own reaction. So when the mind succeeds in perceiving the external causes of sensations by themselves, it will acquire the power of perceiving all fine material existences, all fine bodies, forms, sukshma sharira. Now, now the second stage, that is artha, reveals many things. The mantra can be used in so many ways. Now, that is the part of yoga which you may call as miracles. These are not miracles, these are absolutely scientific things. You may call it intuition. How do you know, Swamiji? I may ask the Guru, how do you know that all these sukshma and the other aspects of that mantra are revealed to you? Not just the mantra, any sound. You will train your mind if you meditate to catch some people. Thakur could understand even before somebody spoke. He could directly read the mind. We may not have that capacity, but mantra or dhyana gives you the capacity to understand subtle things behind the gross. You just don't hear somebody speaking. When you speak, like a psychologist does, psychologist of course does out of because of his training and some kind of uh, guesswork he has to do, and he interprets the different sentences. He says, he asks so many questions, but here it is not like that. Here the yogi or the guru should have the capacity to understand the inner feeling or the inner subtle thing behind the gross utterance. So it's like, you say, take most common example of a mother and a child. Now mother does not have to be, the child does not have to tell that I am feeling hungry or I have to pass my urine, I am feeling pain or something. The mother is so sensitive that mother can understand that the child is either crying, oh this is a cry because it is something is paining, maybe the stomach is paining, something, oh this cry is because it wants to eat something. So that the subtle thing behind is graspable because of the meditation. It's the mother's intent meditation on the child, on the welfare of the child. So also when we meditate intently on mother, then mother will reveal many things. And then you will do or say certain things which may appear to common people as a miracle, but no, it really happens. Because you see, you develop a kind of seeing subtle things. Swamiji says, people will acquire the power. Now these are yogic powers. Don't confuse it with, it's not so easy to attain. People may stumble upon it, but to earn these powers, it is known as samyama. I discussed it last time also. That the power, they acquire this strange power. They don't see the shabda as shabda only. They see not only the artha, but they see the jnana behind it. And then the meditation is complete. When the mind can perceive the motions inside by themselves, it will gain control of all mental waves in itself or in others, in itself, in our own personalities or even in others, even before they have translated into physical energy. So, meditation helps you to listen to gross things but interpret it in a subtle way. Now, this is the difference between animals and us. The dog and all the other animals hear certain gross sounds and reacts in a gross way. If we do simply that, then what is the difference between the animals and us? We have to attain this subtle nature. That happens when you do dhyana. That happens when you do sanyama. I'll tell you what sanyama is. When before you see, the yogis, they know it's not some fortune telling or some kind of now forecasting certain things. You say, oh, he has an intuition, he knows beforehand what is going to happen. It's not just, it's rocket, it's not, it's a very simple science where you try to understand by constantly trying to understand the artha behind the shabda and the jnana behind the shabda. You train your mind to be a yogic, the mind to be that of a yogi. It's known as a yogic mind. So yogic mind is doing samyama when it does dhyana. I'll explain that. When he will be able to perceive the mental reaction by itself. You see, not along with the sound. The sound has come, the artha also has come, but the jnana is fully under his control. So by self-control, he hesitates. He doesn't react like other people. It takes some time, no doubt, because that requires tremendous patience. You have to have patience. You just don't jump into conclusions like the animals. They just jump into conclusions. If somebody bites them, they'll bite. That's and their chapter is over. They don't bother to think. That's why human being became more intelligent. He just waits, and when he gets a chance, he takes revenge. That is how even evil men, it is Sanyama done on evil nature, made them great. It's not that great people, they have tremendous concentration. It is misuse, that's all. But if you use it in a good way, you can become a yogi. So, the yogi will acquire knowledge of everything, as every thought, every sensible object, every thought is the result of this reaction. Then he will have seen the very foundation of his mind and it will be under his perfect control. So, the perfect control or sanyama that is explained now, these wonderful powers will come, but Swamiji will warn us that don't run after these powers. The next paragraph he says, but first one has to have sanyama. Sanyama means control of mind. This control of mind is the secret behind dhyana, is the secret behind even powers, the strange powers which we think is a miracle. It's nothing, but it's just a power. Different powers will come to the yogi as he starts controlling the mind in these three stages: Shabda, Artha, Jnana. But he should not yield to temptation so that he may progress. Much evil is there in sense objects and its enjoyments. Now, when he does enjoyment, when he does samyama on sense objects, he has a tendency to grab those things. And if he becomes greedy, then he may become wealthy, he may become a powerful person in the gross world, but then he will have a fall someday or the other. Because Swamiji says much evil is there in these sense objects. They will not serve the purpose of yoga. They will increase your capacity for bhoga to such an extent that you can't extricate yourself from that. And then you will be a victim of the gross world. The gross world will entice you and then bind you, and then it will hold you in its grip. And even if you want to come out of it, you can't come out. So that's what Swamiji says, be completely aware, much evil is there. But if a yogi is strong enough to reject even miraculous powers, he will reach the goal of yoga, complete suppression of the waves in the ocean of the mind. Now you may ask, what is the fun if I completely suppress? The only fun is you get eternal life. This has been a promise made by Jesus, made by every religion, that the spirit is eternal. Otherwise, what is the purpose? If the purpose of this life, if it was gross objects, then there are multi-billionaires. But when they die, they leave the whole thing behind. So, do we waste our powers? The sanyama which we have, that is also sanyama, no doubt. A person who meditates on money, he will get lot of money. Because, but then you ask him or her, what will you do with the money which you have got? Are those tangible things which you think are tangible now going to go with you? Are they going to be eternally with you? When the answer is no, then they come to the life of the spirit. So that is why a person can get renunciation. So according to Swamiji, he says, sometimes I feel, he told this to Sister Nivedita, that he says, I have a very strong feeling that a person who renounces and is not tempted by these worldly objects can only have done so because of he would have enjoyed these things in the previous life as a king. So King Ashoka, all the great emperors, uh, they came to the conclusion when they also thought like all the other worldly people that worldly prosperity, power and gross. But when they understood that with all the gross attainments, like Buddha did, Buddha also was a very rich king. So it is at that stage that out of disgust in the next birth, perhaps he is born without any desire. So one should consider oneself lucky if one is not attracted to the gross. What is the benefit? The benefit is that it's not that he doesn't have the capacity to earn it, but he feels that it's a waste of time to do sanyama on something which is not going to last long. Energy is the same. Don't think it takes more energy for a person to meditate than a person to earn $1 billion. He perhaps may be working harder than all the yogis. He may be giving his whole life for that. And one day in that effort he may die also. But Swamiji says, or even Sri Krishna said in the Bhagavad Gita that, my dear Arjuna, don't worry. Nothing you do in the world of the spirit is going to be lost. Athava yoginam kule. Kule means in the kula of a yogi you will be born, which is very rare. Or you will be born in a prosperous family. That is the promise given by Sri Krishna. That your spiritual effort, don't think it will be wasted. Like the $1 billion which you have to leave behind. No, nothing of the spirit, nothing of the spiritual practices that you have done is going to be left behind. They will all follow you beyond the grave. That's why Jesus gave so much importance. He did not even care if his body was crucified because he knew, I get eternal life. If I give up mammon, I will get God. Both cannot be had. That's a very clear indication here that if the yogi is strong enough, it requires more strength to reject miraculous powers. He will reach the goal of yoga, complete separation of the waves in the ocean of mind. Now, then the glory of the soul, undisturbed by mental distractions, motions of the body will shine in full light and yogi will realize the essence of immortal jnana or knowledge within. That is the highest goal. Now, to enable a person to understand or even appreciate intellectually, one has to experience a little bit of this joy of meditation. That is why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all of them, though they followed the path of bhakti, they said somehow or the other, if you develop a taste for the life of the spirit, it is like Thakur used to make fun, that hemp or some kind of ganja as they call. He says a peacock was given a little bit of opium. And once it got the taste, every day it would invariably turn at that fixed hour to take that opium. So spirituality is like that. Instead of getting attracted by the opium of the world, of which there is no end, people understand it. It's that opium is like the biting of the thorny bushes by the camel. It starts bleeding, but it still thinks, oh, it is sweet, so wonderful taste. But only when it depletes the camel, when too much of the thorns, then the camel becomes weak, then it understands, oh, all I did was eat my own blood, which was because I bit the thorns. Thorns were not at all tasty. It was my own blood that I was swallowing and thinking that is the juice that comes out of that thorny bush. Thorny bush is dry, it has nothing. But that dry thorny bush gives you a feeling that you are tasting something wonderful. So even that is a taste, no doubt. Otherwise, why would so many people run after the worldly things, gross things? Gross gives you joy and it keeps, but it slowly depletes you. Whereas the spiritual joy, it may not come so quickly. It may come slowly, but once it comes, then it does not leave you like the worldly joy. The worldly joy suddenly depletes you. One day you realize when the smaller joys go away, as King Yayati, he he was so fond of he wanted to enjoy his youth. He was becoming old. So he came across a guru who told him that you can get your youth back if you exchange it with your son. You can tell your son and do certain ritual. If you do that, you will become young and you will get another a few years more to enjoy your youthfulness, which you are missing because of old age. So he requested, and his son was such a noble person. He said, okay, I don't care for this body. You take away. Whatever his father said, he obeyed. And he got his youthfulness back. That's why this wonderful uh, uh, book he has written, Vairagya Shatakam. And before that, he has written another book. He wrote 3 books, in fact. One is about the enjoyment of the world. He was so obsessed with that he somehow wanted to become young again and enjoy his life all over again. Then he enjoys, and he has written a book on that, how one can enjoy this gross world. So after writing that, he enjoys the world because he gets a second chance to become young and enjoy the whole youthfulness again. Then he finally, when he becomes old, then he realizes, what am I doing? And then he writes that famous verse. He says, all I've been doing is pouring ghee into the fire. What actually, the fire of desire is so powerful that if you put water, you can douse that fire. But if you put ghee, it will increase that fire, and the fire will never go away. You think by pouring a big can of ghee, you can douse the fire. It's like pouring petrol on fire and thinking that it will be. He says, I was doing that. I thought more and more enjoyment if I get, and he begged his son to give his youthfulness. He says, after enjoying all this, he wrote that wonderful book, Vairagya Shatakam, where he says, Vairagya alone is fearless. Swamiji quotes it. Swamiji has translated some verses from that Vairagya Shatakam. He says, I saw that everything is fraught with fear. If I am rich, that is his famous verse. When he wrote this Vairagya Shatam, after enjoying life, he says, I found that every bit of enjoyment was full of fear. If I had wealth, I was afraid that I will lose it. If I had youthfulness, I was afraid that in old age I will lose this youthfulness. If I had name and fame, he said, I had the feeling that this name and fame may go away someday. Somebody may create a bad name for me, or maybe I may fall into disrepute and I'll lose the honor that I am getting. So that fear was always that I will lose money, I will lose my health, I will lose this thing. So then he comes to the conclusion, then how can I become fearless? All this enjoyment has put more and more fear into me. The more rich I became, the more fearful I was of losing it. The more powerful I became more fearful of losing that power. The more so also with all the things of the world. Then he came to the conclusion, Abhayam Vairagyam eva Abhayam. Mana Vairagya itself, the only thing that gives me fear is Vairagya, because you don't have anything. You give up everything, you give up your ego, then what remains? You are at peace. It is like that wonderful story of, see, Thakur, this whole Vairagya Shatakam is a big book. You don't even have to read that. If you read one parable of Thakur, Sri Ramakrishna said there was a kite. There were many kites, in fact, and there was only one fish. So one kite was very fast. So it just dived and caught hold of that fish in its beak and started running. It wanted to enjoy that fish itself. It did not want to share it with the other kites. And then all the kites started chasing it, because they're not going to give in so easily. Said, Are, you got the fish and we have also tried. Now how can you enjoy? So the kites chased that kite, and it was so tired that it could not sit anywhere to even eat it. That is what happens when we spend all our time gathering, creating property, and then there is so much property that you don't know when you will be able to enjoy that property or that wealth, because you are chasing, the people are chasing you, there are your relatives are chasing you, your sons and daughters are chasing you, everybody is chasing you for your wealth because you have that. So the fish was there, and as long as the fish was in its beak, all the kites were just heckling it. I mean, it was finding, Arey, what a hopeless situation I am in, I have no peace at all. Then finally, not willingly, fortunately, the fish fell out of its mouth. That is Vairagya. Here it was not thoughtful Vairagya, it was accidental Vairagya. But anyway, Thakur says the fish, it dropped the fish. Whether it dropped willingly or not, I am not going to discuss now. But it fell down. And as soon as it fell down, he found a strange thing happened. All the fishes which were chasing him and making his life hell, they just allowed him to live in peace, and they started quarreling amongst themselves. And another fish took it, and then and another kite took it, and all the other kites ran after that. Then he thought, what a fool I was. I wasted all my energy. Anyway, I could not get the fish in any case. And whatever time I ran with that fish, all I did was getting pecked by the other kites. They tortured me, they bit me, they did. I was just holding on to that. But he found that now, you see, I am fearless. Now nobody is going to touch me because I don't have the fish. Now this is what Vairagya Shatakam says. Yayati, King Yayati says, after enjoying all the things of the world and also enjoying what was in the share of my son, that poor fellow gave up his youth. He became old to give his youthfulness to his father. Father said, see, I am not done with my enjoyment. Can you lend you? Some guru has said, or some guy teacher has said that he can, by reciting this mantra, you can transfer. Of course, these are myths, but they show a very important aspect of life, that how this enjoyment he got disgusted, and finally when he got disgusted, he wrote this wonderful book, the Vairagya Shatakam. So that's why Swamiji says here that the undisturbed by mental distractions, like the kite was undisturbed, the glory of the soul it could see. That is the significance of this parable. But as long as it was chasing, as long as the mental distractions, the motions of the body were distracting it, the glory of the soul is not seen, and the soul will not shine in full light, and we cannot realize the. So Swamiji says this samadhi. Now you see something very significant. He says this samadhi is the property of every human being, nay, every animal. So the animal also, at some stage or the other, he will realize that let me not just bark at others. The same dog who used to bark at each other, these dogs also one day will realize, they will evolve. They said, no, there's no fun in this barking. So they will evolve. So Swamiji says samadhi is the property of even the animal. So that's how evolution takes place, according to yoga, from the lowest animal to the highest angel. Sometime or the other, each one will have to come to that state. So if you come earlier, it is your luck. If you have to pass through all the experience, you may say, I don't believe in all this. It's fine. Mother says, you go on playing. Let the kites chase you. You hold on to the fish. And there are people, every one of us is holding on to the fish, that one day we will sit and eat that fish. But the other kites are not going to allow us that. The world is not such a good place that it will allow you to, like the stories, most of the novels and the good novels, they say, and they lived, the fairy tales. That's why we call them fairy tales. It's not a fact. And they lived happily, just to make the children feel that the world is a very good place. We tell them, at the end of the story, everything, all the problems go away. In some of the films also it happens. We don't like a tragic ending to any film. And then when we find that, and they lived happily ever afterwards, which is never going to happen if that was the case. But that is just a illusion. which is created by Maya. But Swamiji says, no problem, don't be disillusioned. Even animals will come to this conclusion. But if you are luckier than these animals, then he says, sometime or the other, each one of us, even the animals, will have to come to that state of samadhi, because that is our real state. And then alone will real religion begin for him. Now you can imagine. Now he says, till then what are we doing? Just running around in the name of religion. So until then, we only struggle towards that stage. But he says that struggle is not going to go waste, as Arjuna asked. We have to struggle, because every time we understand this, somebody tells us, scriptures tells us, we believe in it, again we forget, then we struggle, no problem. We have to struggle. We have to bear all the struggle because of our own foolishness. And nobody has asked us to do it, but we ourselves choose to struggle. Then what can God do? So there is no difference. Now, you see, until then, we only struggle towards that stage. There is no difference now between us and those who have no religion. You see, Swamiji makes such a wonderful statement. You may be reading Raj Yoga, we may be reading Raj Yoga, but unless we feel that is the only goal, there is absolutely no difference between us and those who say we don't believe in religion, because we have no experience. So he says, yogis say that have a little experience, see what happens if you do mantra, if you do a little spiritual practice. Just don't be impatient. Just have the patience to practice it for some time. As I told you, Raja Maharaj once told a brahmachari who said, I am practicing for 2 years, 3 years. He said, practice a little more, but do it sincerely, and if you don't get the result, come and slap me on the face. That is what Raja Maharaj said, because they knew that experience will come sooner or later. It only requires a little patience and proper practice. So, Swamiji says, then will all sorrows cease, all miseries vanish, seeds for actions, the karma bija, will be burned and the soul will be free forever. Each one of the steps to attain samadhi has been reasoned out, properly adjusted, scientifically organized, and when faithfully practiced, will surely lead us to the desired end. So what is the use of this? Swamiji says, then will all sorrows cease, all miseries vanish, the seeds for actions will be burned, and the soul will be free forever. Now this is a very difficult thing to believe right now, because we have not perhaps trained ourselves and passed through all the different steps. Otherwise, if we were lucky enough to somehow come across this theory, not just as a theory, by somebody who has practiced it, and who, like the Uttam Vaidya of Thakur, forces it down your throat. That's the role of the guru. Thakur says there are 3 types of gurus. One is the lowest guru, who gives you the mantra and says, okay, you do it. If you do it, you will get the benefit. Otherwise, you will not. There is the second one who goes on convincing you, said, no, you do it. He goes on earnestly. But the third one scolds him and just pushes the medicine down his throat. So that is the ideal doctor, who says, don't argue with me, just take it. So that is Uttam Vaidya, or the best doctor is like Thakur. Thakur did not have to convince people. He told these stories. Some people accepted it. If Naren did not believe it, he just touched him and he got the experience. Unfortunately, everybody doesn't have that capacity. All are not Uttam Gurus. But the scriptures tell us that someday or the other we have to come face to face with the illusion which the world creates, and the permanent nature of the spirit has to awaken in us. Every animal, he says, not just human beings, every animal will come to this conclusion. But he has to pass through all the different karmas which he is destined to pass through, and finally he will come to the goal. So if there are questions, I started 5 minutes late, so I took. So maybe if there are some questions, you can ask.
Swamiji, namaste. Komal here. Can I ask a question?
Yes, yes.
So my question is, Swamiji, you talk about the mantra and the bija, the earth with it. But if you're not initiated and you don't have a mantra, is it still possible to then continue your spiritual practice in a different way? Or do you think without the mantra, you couldn't?
Mantra is one way of doing. Shabda, Artha, and Jnana. I told you, na? So Shabda can be mantra. It can be a scripture. Bhagavad Gita also has mantras. The Vedas have mantras. The Vedas are full of mantras. Gayatri mantra is there. But in each case, the essential thing is, first there is the Shabda, that is the mantra itself, the sound, the Artha, the meaning behind Gayatri or any other mantra, or the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Bible, you take any scripture. Everything that has been uttered and which speaks of spiritual realities has a Shabda, has a Artha. Even the most silly things of the world has a Shabda, Artha and Jnana. Just saying water. You know, water is not just a sound. It means something. And it has a knowledge. The water is wet. It can do this. It can do that. So Shabda, Artha, Jnana is not, it is there in the gross. It is there in the subtle. But which Shabda, which Artha, which Jnana you go after is very important. If you go after the spiritual Shabda, Artha and Jnana, you get that benefit. But there is no need to take, initiation is just one path among many. There are other paths also.
Guys, could you put it on?
Okay? Thank you.
Okay. Any other question? Hello. If there are no questions, can I take your leave? Okay. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj. Namaste, Maharaj.
Thank you, Swamiji. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
Pranam Maharaj.
Thank you, Maharaj. Namaste. Vayu here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Aujo. Bye.